Are the Royals going to end this offseason without a big move? I'll give you my opinion next on Locked On Royals.
You are Locked On Royals, your daily Kansas City Royals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, everybody. I am Jack Johnson, host of Locked On Royals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the number one sports podcasting network out there. And if you're wanting to find a way to find this channel, what to expect from this channel, and to find me on social media, first we can start with social media. You can find me on Twitter at JohnnyJ_15. That is at JOHNYJ_15. And for this channel, you can listen to us wherever you download your podcast. That can be Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, Google Podcast, Odyssey, and YouTube. Just be sure to hit that follow button and subscribe. For the first-time listeners wondering what to expect from this channel, we bring you episodes right now, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, but that is going to change on February 1st. We'll be jumping back up to 5 episodes a week, and they will always be 30-minute episodes in length. Before we get started, I want to tell you that today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. We're now on to the championship round in the NFL postseason, and FanDuel is officially in playoff mode. So visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your Profit Boost Pack every NFL playoff game day. It was reported on Friday from Ken Rosenthal that it's unlikely the Royals are to land 2 of their biggest trade targets of the offseason, which would be Jarren Duran and then Brendan Donovan of the St. Louis Cardinals. And when that report came out late on Friday night, I knew the public perception was not going to be very positive. A lot of us, including myself, have been waiting around for some big move to happen, waiting for that impact bat. And when this came out, I can be completely honest that I was quite disappointed. I was let down that yet another offseason seems to be moving by where they're not going to be able to land that bat that can really move the needle in the middle of the lineup. I can also see the other side to this because it wasn't all negative reaction on the timeline. It wasn't all negative reactions on YouTube here for our comment section. There were a lot of people too that said, if the asking price isn't going to come down, you don't just make a trade to make a trade. And I feel that's also a great way to look at it as well. The Royals have an abundance of pitching, and we've known that for this entire offseason. And yet every time that I have mentioned one of the names, and it might not be Cole Reagans, it could be Bubic, it could be Bergert, Kolek, Luinder Avila, there's somebody in the comment section that would say, I'm not willing to part ways with that guy. You've got a young pitcher with years of control. I don't think that Jarren Duran is that good. Brendan Donovan is a utility guy. It's just not worth giving up the lifeblood of your team. And you can never take depth in your rotation, depth in your bullpen for granted. And looking at these 2 trade targets the Royals have had, and I know there was a third one in Taylor Ward, and that did get close to happening. They just seem to go back over and over again and asking for Carter Jensen. And the Royals obviously do not want to give up Carter Jensen. Didn't want to last year, and this year he's expected to be a starter in the lineup. No need to trade that guy for someone who's going to be a free agent at season's end. And they went for Grayson Rodriguez, who's a young pitcher coming off injury, still has multiple years of control, and at one point was one of the better young right-handers in the American League. For Donovan, you're looking at a deal that probably involves a Noah Cameron and then some. Has multiple prospects involved. Wouldn't surprise me if David Shields was mentioned. Wouldn't surprise me if Blake Mitchell's included in that deal. And though we may look at Blake Mitchell and say, hey, you've got Carter Jensen, the Royals still value Blake Mitchell as high as they valued him coming out of the draft. I mean, they took him top 10, and just because Carter Jensen is now in the big leagues doesn't mean Blake Mitchell can't be a big contributor for this team down the road. And Brendan Donovan, as much as I believe him to be a perfect fit for this team, that asking price is steep. And so that does lead us back to this point for the Royals of, if the asking price is not coming down on those 2 guys, then there's nothing that's going to change that unless other moves happen, dominoes start to fall, and then that asking price comes down. It doesn't appear to be happening, though. The asking price for Jarren Duran and Brendan Donovan has remained the same since the beginning of the offseason. And the Royals do not want to part ways with Cole Reagans, and they do not want to part ways with Noah Cameron. Chris Bubich, on the other hand, I can understand why they'd want to move him for a bat. He's going to be a free agent at season's end. He's been injury prone the last 2 years. You've heard me go through this spiel before. Them holding on to Chris Bubich, though, has allowed me to turn a corner. Because where it was almost a no-brainer, if you could get Donovan or Duran for Bubich and a prospect, you do that deal. That doesn't appear to be where the teams are lining up, though. The Cardinals and the Red Sox see what a lot of teams see. Somebody that they'd only have for a year, he's a rental, and there's no guarantee that he's going to pitch the entire season. They're not going to be giving up their premier bats for Chris Bubich. On the Royals side, you already have Chris Bubich. He's not, he technically is a rental this year, but you've had him his entire career. If you roll the dice and bank on his health, he can be the second best pitcher in your rotation. Let us not forget, he was an all-star last year. He was the best pitcher on the team before the rotator cuff strain. And he'd even said that he started to feel some of that tightness, some of that soreness in spring training. So he wasn't even 100% for the entirety of that season. That does concern me about the injuries more so than the effectiveness. It is a good thing to have, though, where you look at somebody and go, if he's healthy, he's going to be good. Rather than the other way around of, we don't know if he's going to be any good. He does have a clean bill of health. We just don't know what type of arm he's going to be. With Chris Bubich, to me, it completely comes down to if he's healthy. And if he's healthy, I expect him to be the second best pitcher in this rotation behind Cole Reagans. And Cole Reagans is the same story almost. If he's healthy, he's going to be not just the best pitcher on the team, one of the best pitchers in the American League, like he was in 2024. Noah Cameron is someone that has 5+ years of control, coming off finishing 4th in Rookie of the Year voting. I understand why the Royals don't want to trade him away and then some to get somebody who, yes, would be an upgrade for their team, but also isn't a surefire outfielder. Brendan Donovan is a Gold Glove second baseman who can play left field. And you have Isaac Collins as well. You do have Kyle Isbell and Lane Thomas in center, and you have Caglione in right. To get another bat and an outfield bat, somebody's getting moved off their position, whether that be Collins, maybe you're moving Isbell. That was my pick. If you've listened to my episodes long enough, I said I'd go after somebody that can play center, or Collins can shift to center, and therefore you feel pretty good about the state of your outfield. I just don't know if I can, with a month to go here, be completely irate about them not going out there and getting the impact bat when this is what the market has looked like. Even in free agency, the asking price, or just the price in general of some of these guys, is way too high for what they're worth. Is anybody wondering why Austin Hayes hasn't signed? Because you go back to the Mike Yastrzemski deal from Atlanta, who got a multi-year deal north of $10 million a year. Somebody that I believe to be a platoon bat for someone elsewhere on a 1-year deal. Why Harrison Bader hasn't signed yet? Because whereas Harrison Bader might be better valued at a 2-year, $20 million deal, he's likely asking for a 3 or 4-year deal north of 13 to 15 million. And that's far too steep for a lot of teams. Free agent market is expensive. And then you look at the trade market, and it appears to be expensive as well. And we all know that it's not cheap to go out there and get an impact bat. And for the Royals, it appears their path is going to be, we are going to count on the young players who debuted last year to get a chance to grow and develop. And if they do, you'll feel dang good about holding on to the pitchers that you have and have this abundance of depth, where even guys like Ryan Bergert and Steven Koa could start the year in AAA due to having minor league options, and they can stay stretched out. And you have a good starting 5, and you have a pretty deep bullpen. The offense still concerns me, and so this leads into my last point here. Though some people will say, well, Jack, you're defending J.J. Picollo for not making a move after saying he should make a move all off season long. It's not quite the case. I can understand the market really isn't playing to their favor. What I can also say is this. It didn't have to just be Duran or Donovan. There are other options out there that make sense for the Royals that would upgrade their outfield. That would be more of a sure thing than Kyle Isbell, and in my opinion would be more affordable. But the way the market is, though, is it a situation where you go to Austin Hayes and say, we'd like to have you on a 1-year deal. And he goes, well, I saw Mike Yastrzemski got a 2-year deal worth $22 million. That's what I want. The Royals aren't going to pay that for a bench guy. And they're not going to give Harrison Bader a 3 to 4 year deal unless that price drives down. The market is just been a little bit too steep for a lot of teams in the Royals position this year. Yes, you can complain about not being as aggressive spending money. They've also went out there and made some trades that I believe have made them a lot better. Their bullpen is better. Their rotation from moves at the deadline last year is better. Their offense, as crazy as it sounds, is going to be better than it was last year. There's more upside there than there was last year. And with that, we're going to take our first break of the show. When we come back, I'm going to tell you the bench spots that they still need to fill. And for our final segment, we're going to circle back to that point. Why I do think they're in a better spot now than they were 365 days ago. We'll get into those two segments next on Locked On Royals. Welcome back in. I am Jack Johnson, host of Locked On Royals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcasting network out there. Before we move forward, I want to tell you about today's title sponsor in FanDuel. FanDuel is officially in playoff mode. Every game day during the NFL playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action. Because right now, every NFL playoff game day, FanDuel users get a profit boost pack waiting for them inside the app. Each game day, you'll see a pack loaded with multiple profit boosts you can apply to the bets that you like the most. You can open your profit boost pack first thing on game day and see what boost you want to apply, and the boosts let you lean into your game day instincts, whether you're backing momentum, defense, quarterback play, or coaching. The boosts give you more juice on the bets you already like instead of forcing to bet something new. So visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL playoff game day. For my pick, I will take the under on the total for the Patriots and the Broncos, and I will take the over on the total for the Seahawks and the Rams. I will take the Seahawks to win and move on to the Super Bowl, and I will take the Patriots to beat Jarrett Stidham and the Broncos to represent the AFC in the Super Bowl yet again. Also want to tell you about the Everydayer Club. We want to thank you for making Locked On Royals your first listen of the day. Thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcasting network out there. And if you have not signed up just yet, there is a ton of access if you do want to sign up to be a part of the Everydayer Club. Very simple to do. Scroll down below, click on the URL link. This can be if you're listening on YouTube or any of the podcasting networks out there, or podcast apps, I should probably say. You click on it, they're going to take you from there. You got Discord access. I'm going to be signing up to that, so we'll have this giant group chat, if you will, that we can talk about all things Royals. You also can get ad-free Locked On Royals episodes as well. If you can't get enough of our podcast and you want to breeze through all the ads, well, that might be the best way to go about it in signing up for the Everydayer Club. And even if you want to give it as a gift, that's fine as well. Again, just scroll down below, click on that URL link, and they are going to take you from there. Just because of the report from Ken Rosenthal that the Royals are unlikely to land Jarren Duran or Brendan Donovan, it does not mean that moves being made are going to be non-existent for the rest of the offseason. And when we show up to surprise Arizona, which we'll be down there for the week of the first full squad workouts, we'll be giving you tons of coverage out there. We'll be doing podcast interviews. I'll be posting those interviews with players on Spotify and all the podcasting networks. I won't have my camera set up, but you guys will be able to listen to those relatively easily. But when we're down there, there is going to be a few more additions that we aren't even talking about right now. And for the simple point of they need to fill out their bench. The Royals do not have a complete bench just yet. And when I put this out there on Twitter yesterday, there were some people that said, what about this guy? What about this guy? I would honestly like to have this guy on the roster. And while those guys might have a good chance of making the roster, I'm not sure the Royals need to count on those guys to all of a sudden have career seasons. I understand they're bench spots. Those guys aren't starting every single day. But with the way Matt Quatraro handles his lineup, which is going, a platoon lineup nearly every other day, you want to have a pretty good bench because those lineups will work if you have guys that are designed to crush lefties or be really good defenders. And in my opening day roster projection, I'm currently at 24. And I'm leaving off that list for the bench Tyler Tolbert. I'm leaving off that list Drew Waters. I'm leaving off Cameron Meisner. I'm leaving off John Rave. I am also leaving off, who did I have here? Yeah, I don't have Lofton, Blanco, Tolbert, Rave, Meisner, Waters. And without a good spring, none of those guys are going to have a great chance to make the roster. And with not landing the impact bat, or if that is the case, and what Rosenthal is reporting is 100% accurate and not a smokescreen, and they're left to just filling out the bench, it feels likelier that they're going to go through free agency for that. And then their bench would include Michael Massey, Lane Thomas, and 2 free agent acquisitions. You don't need to carry a third catcher, in my opinion. You've got Salvador Perez, who's going to catch, give or take, 100 to 110 of these games, and you have an incredibly young catcher in Carter Jensen. To carry a third catcher on the roster when you have a young, controllable catcher who's got fresh legs under him, you're just wasting a roster spot, in my opinion. And the reason I have had Blanco and Tolbert off my roster projection for the last couple of weeks is I weigh the value of having speed late in the game and having someone who can actually drive in a run or put one over the fence coming off the bench. It's tough to do, but the Royals in the last couple of years have highlighted key moments late in the game of you want to have Dairon Blanco in there. You want to have Tyler Tolbert in there so you can steal an extra base. And now we go from leadoff guy on to runner at second and nobody out, bunt him over, sack fly, game's tied. It's great thinking. And for a long time, the Royals have done it that way. And a lot of teams in baseball do it that way anyway, of having that designated pinch runner. Tyler Tolbert and Dairon Blanco, though, are truly designated pinch runners. I understand Blanco had the 2 home run game in Cincinnati. Tyler Tolbert didn't have all that poor of a batting average. When you look at them late in the game, though, if they come into the game as a pinch hitter, do you trust them to get a hit off a tough lefty? Because that's when they would be called upon to be pinch hitting. The Royals can do better than that. If you want to value offense and value someone that can go out there and really move the needle late in the game, that's where I think you can get that advantage. I'm not sure that having a designated pinch runner on the roster gives you that tremendous advantage when you do have a couple of guys that are already good at stealing bases. Yeah, Salvador Perez could lead off the 9th inning with a single, then you want to have a pinch runner. Why not just put in someone like Michael Massey, who's quicker, but he's not going to swipe second base? And I wasn't blown away by the success rate of Tyler Tolbert or Dairon Blanco, or how often Tyler Tolbert decided not to go to second, where I want to give that roster spot to someone who isn't as effective as Terrence Gore was, or isn't as effective as Jarrod Dyson. And that's the misconception about Jarrod Dyson. Jarrod Dyson was a dang good 4th outfielder, and he had a couple of games where he could change the game offensively. He was a well-rounded player that would have started for a lot of teams during that time period. Terrence Gore was a designated pinch runner. He also never got thrown out. He would get on first, you knew he was going, and he was going to swipe second base. It took a long time before he had finally gotten thrown out. And it's crazy I can remember that. I remember exactly who threw him out. It was Roberto Perez of Cleveland back in 2017, or maybe it was 2018, I want to say. Maybe it was 19. So I remember who threw him out. I don't quite remember the year, so forgive me on that. That's not who Dairon Blanco or Tyler Tolbert is. When it comes to Drew Waters, he's gotten his opportunities, and we know what he is and what he isn't. Nick Lofton, I view him the same way. We know who he is. We know who he isn't. And the Royals bench, if you're going to run these platoon lineups out there time and time again, they need to be more successful than they were last year. If you're facing Tarek Skubal in the rubber match in a must-win game against Detroit to leapfrog them in the division, if you're going to throw that platoon lineup out there, I want to see consistent, good right-handed hitters, even in the bottom of the lineup. I don't want to get into a situation where you have guys in the lineup just because they're righties. That's what it felt like late last season. Well, we're going with a righty-heavy lineup, and some of these guys are in the lineup because they just hit from the right side. they don't necessarily have great numbers against left-handed pitching. They need to fill out these 2 bench spots through free agency, in my opinion. Not sure you want to count on the guys that you have in-house. If you want to round out this group and make sure the offense has a much higher floor, having a good and solid bench is a good way in doing that, is the right way in doing that. If you're going in there to count on Jonathan India bouncing back and Carter Jensen being a big piece and Jack Caglione bouncing back, then you need to make sure the backup options are serviceable as well. When you're running those platoon lineups out there, they're going to work. You're not just hopeful that they're going to work. Do you see the Royals adding 2 more bench players through free agency, or are they going to stay in-house? You let us know in the YouTube comments below. When we come back, I'm going to tell you why I think the Royals are in a better spot now than they were exactly 1 year ago today. That's coming up on Locked On Royals. Welcome back into Locked On Royals. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcasting network out there. For our final segment, I want to express my reasons as to why I'm seeing a better version of this team in 2026 than I was a year ago in 2025. And it wasn't that I wasn't high on what the Royals were doing in the offseason last year. At the time, Jonathan India seemed to be a decent addition. Somebody that could come in, lead off, and give you a 350 OBP ahead of Bobby Witt Jr. You had confidence at some point Jack Caglione was going to join that lineup, and he was going to have a much bigger impact than he ever even came close to in 2025. You had reasons to remain optimistic. They also were coming off a postseason appearance. They are returning a lot of the same guys. They'd added a few pieces. It's not that I was down on them last year. It does feel different this year in what they've added. And this is coming off a year in which they fell short of the postseason at 82-80. Last year going into opening day, the Royals had Kevin Biggio at first base. Vinny Pasquantino had the hamstring strain, so he was DHing. You had Jonathan India playing left field, I want to say it was. Massey was at second. Michael Garcia, actually India was at third base now that I think about it. Melendez was in left field. Michael Garcia did not start on opening day. Isbell was in center. Renfroe was in right. And Cole Reagans was starting on the mound. You felt very good about the rotation. You felt somewhat okay about the bullpen. You added Estevez. You had Schreiber back. You had Ursig. There were some good pieces in the bullpen. I think this bullpen is better. They added their best reliever over the offseason with Matt Strom. Estevez coming off a year in which he led the league in saves. You have Lucas Ursig back. You have John Schreiber back. Steven Cruz finally popped at the big league level. You can use guys like Luinder Avila. You could see a good season from Alex Lang if he can stay healthy. You've got Nick Mears coming over from Milwaukee in the Isaac Collins trade. The bullpen is much deeper. And the bullpen still could be added to before we get to spring training. Offensively, you look at the outfield. Though it is not drastically different than it was last year, you started MJ Melendez and Hunter Renfroe on opening day. Maybe you are overly critical of Isaac Collins or you're just not as high on him. Isaac Collins is the best outfielder the Royals have had in quite some time. And that says more about the Royals' state of the outfield. I get it. It's not to completely ignore that and pump up Isaac Collins because he's only done it for 1 year at the big league level. Still, those numbers last year, if you regresses slightly, he's still one of the best Royals outfielders they've had in a handful of seasons. Kyle Isbell is no longer an everyday starter, even if you think he is. Lane Thomas will be his platoon option in center. Therefore, we're only seeing Kyle Isbell against righties, and we're probably only seeing Lane Thomas against lefties. Jack Caglione is in right field, and coming off a 150 season, I'm not going to sit here and try to say, well, that's a fluke and that's not going to happen again. I can expect him to improve. I'm not going to sit here and sell you on him hitting 250 with 35 home runs. I can wish for that. It would be foolish of me to do. Those three outfielders, though, can we all agree it's a much better outfield than it was last year? You were banking on Hunter Renfroe to stay healthy and look good in his quest of staying healthy. You were finally hoping, or maybe not finally, you were giving one final chance to MJ Melendez to show that the batted ball metrics were going to work in his favor in 2025. And not only did those two guys struggle, those were the two worst offensive players in the sport for the first month of the season. And Michael Massey was as well. So three guys right there that are no longer starters, and two of them are no longer on the team. That's a box you can check off there. Bullpen-wise, you added Matt Strahm, who is the best reliever in your bullpen. That's just my thought. You can have a differing opinion. Estevez, we know what he's capable of. And we already knew that once they had brought him in free agency, that he was going to have a high number of saves. Lucas Ursig, we know who he is at this point. John Schreiber, we know who he is. Nick Mears, there's a lot of sure things in the bullpen. Not saying they're going to be fantastic and they're going to rival the HDH bullpen, but it's nice to have a bullpen where you know what's coming out every time the gate swings open. When somebody comes in, okay, I can expect him to get through this situation. I can expect him to look good in a high leverage spot. They have a lot more guys that can do that in 2026 than they did in 2025. The state of the rotation. I was pretty high on the rotation going into last year, was not high on the depth. I did not think they added enough to the depth part of it as they have last trade deadline and going into this offseason. You had Chris Bubich, who was making that transition. You weren't sure if he was going to be great. He was in the first half. Cole Reagans, he didn't perform as well as he did in 24. Lugo and Walker regressed. Michael Lorenzen regressed a little bit. This year, you've got Noah Cameron coming off a great season. You're banking on Chris Bubich staying healthy. Cole Reagans, Walker, Lugo, they're all back. You also have Bergert, and you also have Kolek. There's 7 starters right there, and you still have a couple of more that you could turn to as your 8th and 9th starter. It's a good spot to be in. And though the impact bat has eluded them, and that has frustrated me, that has frustrated you, this is also a situation where we can acknowledge they are marginally better in a few spots where they were ghastly last year. They were just downright terrible. And that's an area where I do feel better in. I've got more confidence in that going into 2026. It could always bite me in the butt, and I could be way off on it, and I could look like a fool 1 year ago from now. That is certainly a possibility, and I have been more than wrong before. And spring training numbers are not going to sway my decision one way or another. I was high on Michael Massey coming out of spring training last year. He had his worst season offensively. This is a team that has gotten marginally better. I'm not going to say they are a completely different team and they're going to win 15 more games. There isn't as much counting on players who have never done it to improve going into this year as there was last year. You needed to count on MJ Melendez. You needed to count on Isbell. You needed to count on Renfroe. You need to see if Salvador Perez could have as good of a season again. You needed Bobby Witt Jr. to be an MVP candidate. Michael Garcia was nowhere near the player he is now. Vinny Pasquantino had still had every single season get cut short due to injury. Michael and Vinny are different players than they were 1 year ago today. There are still some players that you can go the opposite way with this. Jonathan India, I thought highly of going into last year. Not so much this year. That's baseball, though. You're going to go year by year with this thing, or these things, I should say. And it's not to guarantee a postseason spot. It's not to guarantee that all the players I just talked about are going to be phenomenal in 2026. Just on paper, this does appear to be a team that has a higher floor, maybe slightly, just slightly, than they did in 2025. I'll know I have some people disagreeing with me, but feel free to let us know your thoughts in the YouTube comments below. That's going to do it for another edition of Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I've been your host, Jack Johnson. Thank you for tuning in to today's Locked On Royals podcast. On Thursday, which is when we'll be back, we'll dive into more targets that are not named Jarren Duran and Brendan Donovan, but make sure you subscribe and follow this podcast so you get all the latest episodes. If you ever miss an episode, the Everydayer Club is built for you. Get Locked On Royals ad-free, plus members-only Discord access and more. Head to the custom link below to join the club. For those on video, we send you to the first ever 24/7 national Locked On Podcast Network YouTube channel. And on audio, make sure you make your second listen Locked On MLB. Until Thursday, you take it easy, Kansas City.